It is definitely. I would if you had asked me who I am, I would not say I'm the manager of a translation company. I would not say I'm a soccer player. I would say I'm a linguist. I'm a lover of languages. So yes,
Mm,
that is how I identify myself. Not even by my name, you know,
yeah.
Sean. I define myself. I don't think of myself as Sean. I think of myself as a guy who loves languages.
Welcome to Nolwenn-Languages Connection Podcast. I'm Nolwenn, your host, and in this video you're going to see the recording of my interview for the episode number 20 of my podcast. I interviewed Sean Hopwood, the CEO of Translations. Let's get started. Hi Sean, how are you?
Hi,
Welcome.
Nolwenn, I'm very well. How are you?
I'm really happy to have you on this podcast. And yeah, I'm not at home actually because it's a bank holiday here in France. I'm based in France, and so I'm not at home. So I tried to find like a corner that looked all right. So if you okay with it, we're gonna start.
Okay.
Yeah, and basically today we're just going to talk about languages in general, because that's obviously that's your thing and that's mine. If you don't mind just starting by introducing yourself, you could tell us where you're from and why languages is part of your life.
Oh, well, I'm from a small town in Florida called Bartow. It's near Tampa, Florida. That's where I grew up. I've always been passionate about languages ever since I was really young. It's something that really interests me, and it's interesting because it hasn't faded at all. I'm 41 now, and I'm still extremely passionate about languages. I'm learning a couple right now, and I'll be doing it forever.
Okay, so straight away that made me think of something, because when I was a child, I was not interested in languages. I wasn't interested in it at all. I remember my first day of English class, because I'm from France. And I thought, well, I'll never go to England, so it's fine. You know, I don't need it. So do you remember how you got interested in it? I mean, what was it that made you so motivated and interested?
It's insane. It's like, I'll just be honest. It's like a drug for me, kind of like. I started learning Spanish and even a little bit of Urdu when I was really young. I went to a summer camp, and there was this girl named Yasmin Mohammed, and she was like a Pakistani girl, and she started teaching me these words in Urdu, and I was like, wow, that's really nice. And then growing up in my neighborhood, I actually I lived in a predominantly Mexican neighborhood, and they would teach me words here and there, little by little. And I don't know if it's kind of like I'm really good at languages, or just the fact that I started learning languages when I was really young, and I started to get kind of like recognized for that. So I kind of fostered that ability more and more. So yeah, because everyone would be like, oh, that's Sean, that's the guy who, he's really good with languages. So the more people said that, the more it kind of boosted my self-esteem. And I just started learning more languages from there, just more and more. And it was really fun, and this is kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy. The more people tell me I'm good at it, the more I keep trying,
No,
So yeah, it started when I was like really young.
Yeah.
Like I guess before 7 years old.
Yeah, so very young. So it started with basically another girl, I mean, a child who was your age, and you wanted to communicate with her. And I think that you said something that, because I really strongly believe in the emotional connection that you got with the language. And for me, that's like the number one factor that's going to help you learn it. And I'm really interested in the notion of identity, and what you said is fascinating, because you said people identified me as someone who was good at it. Oh, this is the guy who's interested in languages. This is the guy who speaks languages. This is the guy who learns languages. And so you became that identity. It became part of you, and it's still part of you, and it truly defines you.
For sure.
Yeah.
It is definitely. I would, if you had asked me who I am, I would not say I'm the manager of a translation company. I would not say I'm a soccer player. I would say I'm a linguist. I'm a lover of languages. So yes, that is how I identify myself. Not even by my name, you know,
Yeah.
Sean. I define myself. I don't think of myself as Sean. I think of myself as a guy who loves languages, and it's amazing the identity you get from languages. I mean, a lot of people get identity from their hobby. Like if you're a violinist, you know, like, oh, that person is really good at playing the violin. But for me, you kind of, and you know this because you speak a few languages, so you kind of, your identity, your personal identity changes a little bit when you speak different languages. And
Yeah.
it's actually helped me in my life, because I've had people tell me that I'm much more like kind when I speak Spanish. And I kind of caught that. I noticed, I'm like, okay, if I'm doing this in Spanish, let me try to do this in English too.
Ah,
So
that's nice. Yeah.
that little learning of languages has made me a better person, because all those little things reflect off you, you know, like if you're in like a Colombia, and someone's like, ah, bien pueda, en qué le puedo ayudar? You know, you're just like, okay, buenas tardes. You know, they always say good afternoon and good evening, you know, and that kind of leaks into your English. And then you start acting like that when you're speaking English. And people are like a little bit taken aback by it, you know. When I go to like a grocery store, I'll say, hey, good afternoon. How are you? Know, they'll be like, what'll it be? And I'm like, hey, good afternoon. How you doing? You know, so these things, these linguistic things are also connected to culture, and they're part of culture. So you can't separate language and culture. And so once you learn someone's language, their culture rubs off on you. And I feel like right now I'm kind of like an amalgamation of a bunch of different cultures.
Yes.
And I wish that I could just bring someone inside and show them everything, you know. Whenever I'm speaking to someone who's, you know, speaks Spanish, they're like, oh, this is my friend Sean. He loves the Hispanic culture. I'm like, that's true, but I also love a bunch of other cultures.
Yeah.
And then I'll speak to my friends from Morocco, and they're like, oh, Sean, he loves Morocco. I'm like, yeah, that's true. So these people are kind of like in their own world in a way, like thinking that I only like their culture, which I do, but I like a lot of cultures. So
yeah.
I just go on.
I agree with you. No, it's I agree with you that culture and languages, I mean, which influence the other, we have no idea. They're so intertwined. And that's so true that for me, because I lived away from France for so many years, I'm back now, but it's really hard to get back to, you know, things are very formal in France if you go to a shop, for example, and I kind of lost that. So it was really hard for me to get back into it, because I lived in the UK for so many years, and then in Argentina for so many years, and they don't have like a formal form of you. So coming back to France was really hard at first. To get back to conjugating the verbs in my native language was like a struggle.
Reverse culture shock.
Exactly. And then it's very weird, because talking about identity, I can't identify with one culture, and I don't know about you. Have you lived in different countries, or have you traveled a lot?
Not for. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, have you been immersed in other culture, or do you find immersion where you are? Because obviously, where you're from, you've got already a wide range of culture there. So, tell us a little bit about your experience with that.
It's very interesting. I'm kind of like living in my own little world. I'm living in. I feel like I'm living in multiple countries simultaneously. I've actually only been to 7 countries. I lived in Colombia for 3 months, and I lived in Morocco for 3 months. That's considered more like a really long vacation or something. It's not really considered living, I guess. But I really immerse myself in cultures when I go to places like
3 months. I would consider 3 months the minimum to say that you live somewhere, because you really have the time to get a feeling of what the place is like.
Instead of just saying I'm on vacation going places, you're like, okay, you got to do your laundry. You got to wait in line to pay your electric bill. You know, these are the things that people do when they live in these countries, and they're like, you know, you don't know what it's like to live here if you were just on vacation. And so I like to just sit there and, you know, and that's what I recommend people who do maybe listen to your podcast. You know, if you're on vacation, just take your bags and go to a laundromat and just, you know, do the laundry with the people, see how that is, you know.
And talk to people there.
Yeah, it's
Because
totally different kind of
people want to
feeling.
talk. If you
Yeah,
talk to, it's like travel by bus. I mean, especially if you go to South America. I mean, people are so chatty over there. Like in Argentina, you talk for hours. So
yeah.
if you travel by bus rather than by plane, for example, you get to talk to someone for hours.
And that's one interesting thing I could tell you about my life. I live in Florida, in Tampa.
Mm.
It's one of the most multicultural cities in the United States. And tonight, literally, I'm going to play soccer with a group of people from Argentina and Uruguay.
Mm.
And literally, like, it's just I feel like I'm in Argentina.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
we talk, and we talk a different dialect of Spanish. They're like, oh, oye, che, you know, stuff like that. It's
Claro.
really nice, you know.
Mm-mm.
And I can't say about all the words they say, you know, but then there's this place in that I just discovered right south of me, like 45 minutes. It's called Northport.
Mm-hmm.
It's all Ukrainians live there. There's this place where you go to a spring. It's called a mineral spring. I went there last week, and I literally got in the spring, and I paid to get in, and this guy was speaking with a very thick accent. And I was like, okay, maybe he's got a thick accent. That's cool.
Mm-hmm.
I like it. You know? I went into the spring. Nobody spoke English. Not one person. It's all Ukrainian.
Mm.
And then I just started talking to him. And well, the only way I found out that it was Ukrainian, because I don't speak it, was one of the guys was there with his son, and his son spoke English. And I said, excuse me, what language is everyone speaking here? And because everyone was over like 60
Mm-hmm.
or 7 years old. And he's like, oh, it's Ukrainian. I'm like, cool.
Mm.
And I just kept swimming, and I was listening to everybody. And I mean, it's nice. And one of my favorite things is surrounding. I like people who don't speak any English,
Yes.
because it forces me to learn their language.
Yeah.
And
Mm.
and I love to. I just love to be the one who adjusts to others. I've always been that way myself. I like to be, you know, I'm never like the kind of person that, you know, oh, learn my language. No, I want to learn your language. You know,
Mm-hmm. Mm-mm.
it's fun. It's fun for me
Yeah.
because
No,
there's so many people who speak English already, you know.
I agree. Also, when you want to learn a language, you need to avoid the speakers of your language. So this is
Yeah,
a trick I used. Anytime I lived abroad, I'm like, I don't mean to be mean to French people, but I was like,
yeah,
oh, he's French or she's French, but I don't want to go there. I want to go somewhere where I know that I won't
yeah,
um, be tempted, or that someone won't speak to me in French. Like I want to speak
yeah,
that language.
yeah.
That's
When
a
I was in
really good
Spain,
trick. Mm.
yeah, when I was in Spain, all these guys in Granada, they were just like all these English guys and American guys were together and like made this little community. And I'm like, why? Why do you want to do that?
Yeah, I
I
mean,
mean, you
you
don't
can
want to learn the
have that
language.
back home.
Yeah,
Why did you come?
yeah,
If it, that is
yeah.
true.
There was a
I
place very famous in Spain, Belidor or Bel something. It's very famous in Spain. All the English people go there.
All right.
There's a TV
Mm.
show about Belidor. I forgot the name of it,
Oh,
but I'll remember
I need to find out. I don't know
It's
Spain
kind of like
very well
Malaga.
actually. Yeah. Well, Malaga
Torre
I've been
Molino.
actually, but
Yeah, I've been to Malaga
let's
too.
let's talk about something that I'm dying to ask you.
No.
Because so I'm a language teacher, and I speak languages, but I don't consider myself with like a talent for language. Like I really need to work hard to get to learn and speak it.
Yeah,
But I think it makes me a better teacher, because then I understand all of the struggles that my students might have.
mhm.
But I find it really difficult to translate. So you're in translation, and I was wondering, I find translation very frustrating. I'm
Mhm.
not, obviously I'm not an expert in it. So how did you go about to learn it? Do you enjoy it? Is it frustrating for you as well sometimes? And how much do you need to know about culture when you translate, especially with languages like Spanish that is spoken in so many countries? So
Yeah,
there's a lot in it, but if you could
yeah,
talk to us a little bit about that approach that you have to translation.
yeah. Well, there's so much I can say about that.
Mm.
It's really complicated. I've actually wrote a poem called "Translation Doesn't Exist,"
Yeah.
and the point of that poem
Mm.
is not to say that you really can't translate things. It's to say there really is no word for word translation for anything in this
Mm-hmm.
world, because culture comes along with every word. So if you have the word, like in French, you say, I'm going home in English. In French, you say, je vais chez moi,
Oui.
It's
Yeah.
not the same thing. It's
Mm-mm-mm.
it has a totally different feel. It has it's not the same words even. In English, you say, I'm going home. In Spanish, you say, voy a mi casa o mi hogar,
See.
and the a casa and hogar are two totally different things. So casa is more just like the structure. Hogar is like the home. So yeah, we have house and home in English. So there is a pretty
Mm-hmm.
much when you become a good translator, you can realize, okay, sometimes there are pretty close equivalents
Mm-hmm.
that you can choose. But one of the most difficult things you can do is try to translate humor. I mean,
Yes. Yeah, I
there's
agree.
I can't even think of an example right now, but like first of all, the sense of humor is different from one
Yes.
culture to the next.
Mm-hmm.
And secondly, the jokes are not going to translate.
Yes.
So I feel so sorry for like the Simpsons translators. I mean, they're in our industry, they're known as like the most famous translators. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that show being translated into different languages is part of the reason why it
Yes.
always became a global phenomenon.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know how you got to choose the voice, you got to choose everything, and they translate movies. They don't even translate the titles the same. I can't think of an example of that either. But
Yeah,
because the
there's
reason is,
so many, probably
yeah,
70% of movies.
yeah, they're not a direct translation because people do something which we kind of call transcreation, where
Mm-hmm.
they use a different term that fits more within that culture. So you don't have to really do a direct word for word translation.
Mm-hmm.
You're doing a marketing and translation at the same time, which is what we kind of call transcreation.
Yes.
So yeah, I translated for a while, and I had a really hard time myself doing it. I mean, I could translate, but I put so much thought into it. I researched every word,
Mm-hmm.
and so I just started hiring translators to do it, and I managed it. And that's why
Yes.
that's why I'm like in the managerial position right now. I feel myself more of like a big picture type of person.
Yes.
And but having been a translator, I understand the job very well. So it's nice that I can kind of relate to the people I work with.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah, of course, it's so important.
yeah,
That is so true. I agree with you, especially sense of humor. And whenever I was learning a language, so for example, I moved to Argentina, and my level was probably pre-intermediate when I went there. Um, but it took me probably, I don't know, maybe 2 years to manage to be funny,
yeah,
and I really enjoy I when I say making just I like to say funny stuff. I mean, obviously, and I consider
yeah,
myself to be definitely more funny in English than
yeah.
in other languages. But it was so frustrating for 2 years. Like I couldn't be funny. It was awful.
I
And
know.
then you
You want
try
people to know your
to,
real personality. They
yeah,
can't see your real
yes.
personality because
Mm-hmm.
you can't express yourself.
Mm-mm.
Yeah. Like Sofia Vergara and she has this joke where she said, "Oh, I'm a lot more smart in Spanish," or
Yeah.
something. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, you can't be yourself if you can't speak the language perfectly. But I'm sorry for interrupting. What else were you
No,
saying?
no, no, no. It's I'm actually you like extended what I
Yeah.
wanted to say. I do have another question that I'd like to ask you, because you work with languages, and yes, you're in a country where you may be exposed to languages, but do you have different languages at home, or do you speak your I don't even know what languages you speak. I know that you speak many, at least five. How
Yeah.
many languages do you?
7, but not fluently.
Yes. Yeah.
uh, um, but luckily my mom speaks a little French,
Mm.
and she took French, and I always showed an interest in languages, so I was able to practice with my mother, But she and I always make sure she doesn't lose what she knows. When we
Hmm.
talk, I'm like, like bonjour mère, je t'aime, and she's like, oh, je t'aime. She's like, yeah, we talk French, and she keeps her basic stuff. My French is not great, but it's more
Ouais.
than basic.
Mais c'est drôle parce que en français, on dit jamais je t'aime, même en famille. So we got
Yeah,
this thing here where we're so, I don't know if I should say shy, but I think I've told my mother that I loved her maybe twice, and it was always
Yeah,
in very serious circumstances, like when she was
yeah,
very, very ill, or
yeah,
we don't say "je t'aime." It's very hard to say, and it's
yeah,
funny how this is something I found out actually with learning other languages, that I could say it, and I could say "I love you." It was much easier.
yeah,
So that's interesting that this is the thing that you'd say, for example, to your mom in French.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's funny because the French people don't say it so much, and I find that a lot in different cultures, and I just I'm just fascinated with cultures. Like
Mm,
I love the ability that I have to kind of like adapt to others. I'm learning Chinese now, and they're the same way. They don't really say "I
mm,
love you"
yeah.
much. They show it,
Mm,
and they show it through actions. And so I learned if I'm going to make friends with a Chinese person, I'm not going to expect that person to be telling me, "Oh, you're cool, you're nice, you're this, you're that." I'm just going to expect that person, if they're around me, they probably think I'm cool, you know. Or
yeah.
if someone brings me some food, they probably that means I love you, or I like you, or if someone does me something nice, and then they by that same token, they don't really understand the American culture, or maybe the Latino culture, where you're so expressive, overly expressive sometimes, and some people might think that's insincere, but you just have to learn to adapt. Everyone has their own way of expressing themselves and expressing love, and I kind of feel very alone in a way,
Hmm.
because I'm sitting here observing all these cultures, and they're just I really wish I could like I could show them what I've seen, or like the way I see things. It's really fun just to observe the Brazilian culture. Like there's eu tenho
Hmm.
saudades de vocês. I'm just like that's such a that's just a different way of saying I miss you or I love you. That's even deeper than as saying I love you in Portuguese in a way. Or it's just like if you say well I me in Chinese, it's like it means a lot,
Yeah,
but they don't say it so much. And so, or even in
that's so
Filipino, like, yeah,
so
mahal kita.
important. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's such an important thing to think of, because especially when you're in a multicultural relationship, and
yeah,
I've got quite a bit of experience in that, and at first, especially when I was young, I didn't know that. You say
yeah,
it and you probably learned it over the years. So you can take it into account when you start learning. But I remember my first relationship with an Irishman, and there's so many things that he didn't understand, and I didn't
yeah,
understand that he didn't, and then I didn't understand him. And there were
yeah,
so many given things for me that were not right. And when I thought back many years after, it's like, why didn't I explain it? Because I didn't know I had to. I
yeah. And
didn't know.
that's the thing. Yeah, that's the thing as translators. One thing that we are, and teachers are the same way. We are really big on context, and we are really big on
Mm,
communication. So as a translator, you realize this person probably, even if I'm saying the right words, they might not understand me. You have to learn to find out what
yeah.
is their love language, what is their work language, what is it that
Hmm.
that really gets to their brain and to their soul. And when you learn that, and the way you learn it is by asking them. Some
Mm,
people don't really communicate well, but you ask them what motivates you, what drives you,
yeah.
and stuff like that. And yeah, when you if you're with someone, or you have a friend, or you date someone from another country, it's nice. A lot of people want to be with something that someone who's just like themselves, but where's the fun in that?
Yeah.
I like to learn. I like to learn. So
It's
it's
interesting
really cool.
because if we look back into some psychology, um, for example, in my family, all of my brothers and sisters, we tend to want to be with someone who's different from us. And
Yeah.
I think it's quite interesting. And I always look, yeah, I'm always interested in sharing not just relationship, I mean, any kind of relationships like friendships,
Yeah.
for work as well. I'm interested in learning from people who are different from me. So yeah, I totally
Yeah.
agree with you. It's so
Yeah.
so rich. I find it very, very
Yeah.
rich.
Yeah, like I was having my friend, he's from Cameroon, and they invited me
Mm.
for food,
I
and
love the
they
food.
all,
Yeah.
yeah, they all eating with their hands, and I'm like,
Yes.
hey, let me just start eating with my hands. I'm not gonna ask for a fork, you
Mm.
know, and
Yes.
so yeah, it's nice. It's nice to learn how people are and how they act in different places, and I really like it. Yeah, I like Nigerian food. I like Cameroon food. I like all types of African food. I'm not gonna say my favorite type of African food because then other people, and I don't know who's on your podcast, they might say no, this one's better, and they'll start arguing.
Yeah, I have no idea. But I lived in West Africa when I was young, because of
Yeah.
my dad. So I
And what
grew
do they think about your French though? Because like you were that's the original French. I mean, do they want to learn your French?
So no, I don't remember there being an issue. I know that they used words that I might not use, or but I don't remember there being even a question for me. But there's some
Yeah,
expressions that they use that at first I didn't understand.
yeah,
So it took me like a while. So I would just ask, I think, if I remember, like, why do you say that? Because it would be all of these fillers that people use that don't have any meaning, but they keep
yeah,
using it, and I was
yeah.
really like confused. But once you understand this, then it's fine. But I was a teenager there, and I think it's really what gave me these passion. Actually, languages happened because I wanted to travel. So
Yeah.
languages came after. The first thing was to discover culture.
That's really good. Yeah. My first place that I ever visited was Spain, and that was my first travel, and I was excited. And the reason I made a trip to Spain,
Mm.
then to Morocco. I made the double trip because I wanted to practice my Arabic and my French and my Spanish all in one trip.
Yes.
And so I try to be efficient. So I got them all done in one trip. And then I went to Holland after that, but I don't speak any Dutch, so I
Mm.
didn't get anything done there. But I did go to Holland for 2 weeks, and that was nice.
That's so interesting. Yeah, I think that because obviously Spain and Morocco are so close, it makes sense to just
Yeah,
go for a round trip.
yeah.
So,
And French is
Sean, thank
okay.
you very much. We're gonna wrap it up in a moment, but I really wanted to thank you. I find it so interesting, especially coming from the translating world. And
Yeah.
well, I hope that we'll keep in touch.
No, for sure. I'm here anytime you want to talk.
Thank you
But
very
yeah,
much.
it's cool. I love it. It was nice meeting you too. Thank you so much.